Well, hello, everybody. Thanks for tuning in to Working Musicians. I'm Dris Organica, and today I'm going to be talking about band dynamics. I also like to thank Smith & Forge, Bud Light, and I think I had a little something else. Oh, Red's apple cider in particular. Yes, mostly Red's apple cider. That's what I've been using as fuel for this current episode in which I am recording. All right, so band dynamics. What do I mean by this? Are you talking about like the dynamics as in like, using your compressor to hush out the voice of the drummer? No, that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about like the chemistry and just how things operate within a band. Because realistically, a band is kind of like a team or a business team or however you so choose to look at it. But it's very important to understand the dynamics of the people you work with in the band so as to make sure that you guys work together, in the long run. And there's some things I've noticed that really seems to help others, myself included, and some things that just flat out do not work. So I don't really have like a format or a top 10 list. I'm not going to really do any of that. I'm just going to kind of talk at will. To me, I think this is the kind of thing that's really more of a conversational piece, not like a step-by-step or a guide of how-to, because everyone's different, every band is different, and the people within them create for some very different dynamics. So when I got around to thinking about what I'm going to talk about in this episode, I toyed around with a few ideas. I started doing a podcast here, a podcast there, and it seems like everything I tried was just, it didn't seem to work every time I would try recording it, because it seemed like I was having to try to imagine too many things and try to make scenarios, and it was just kind of hard to fit it together. So what I've decided to do is just talk about personal experiences in a group I was once in, right? And I'll probably do other episodes, talking about scenarios that I know friends of mine have been in, and just to kind of show some of the pitfalls, the successes, and, what made that band work, what made it fall, and just the reality of myself and other people I know's personal experiences of being in a band, and just to kind of illustrate the reality, because I don't have to make this up. I just have to keep my mind open and remember, just my own life and the lives of others I know. So for the time being, I'm just going to talk about the primary band I was once in. Now, I'm not going to name names. I'm not going to name the band. I'm really not here trying to I'm really not here trying to just promote things that don't exist anymore. I'm really not even here trying to promote my own music or what I currently do. Really, my goal in this episode, and really in this podcast in general, is just kind of trying to give back to the community that I feel has given so much to me. I didn't go to a formal recording school. I haven't done a lot of these things, but because of the internet and people like myself have given back, I think there's a lot of people out there who have gained so much for free just based on the efforts of other like-minded people. So realistically, that is the goal in all this. It is just to shed light onto some personal experiences, and perhaps it'll help others, avoid some of the mistakes I've made or have seen made, and really help benefit the music community as a whole, right? So once again, I'm not here to bash people I know. I'm not going to be naming names, and it's not here to promote a group that no longer exists. It's just to help people using my personal insight and reflect on situations I've been in, just to help the community at large, right? The reason I'm saying all this is because it will, for those of you who actually know me, which is probably very few, it will be pretty obvious some of the people I'm talking about. But I don't think that'll be too many people, and it'll all be deniable. So if for whatever reason you happen to be one of those 3 other people I worked with in this particular group, and you don't like something I say, understand it's not going to be obvious who I'm talking about unless you absolutely know who I am. And on that note, my name is not actually Dris Organica, in case you hadn't figured that out, but I'd like to keep everything separate. My personal life and, my online community life and my, if I dare say, professional life, because it really isn't, but the things I do outside of my personal life and with my family, work, friends, and that kind of thing. I like to keep that separate. So in case you'd been wondering, my name is not actually, so in case you'd been wondering, my name is not actually Dris Organica, but I am going to be sharing some highlights of an experience from when I was in a band to kind of shed light on the reality of band dynamics, which is the purpose of this episode. So back in my late teenage years, I started a band with a relative and a couple of friends, right? I'm in high school. We're all in high school. It's cool. We do the school talent show. We're friends, It's a great time. We get together, we write some music, Next thing you know, we've got enough music to make a, 30 to 45 minute set if we needed to. But typically sets on the, kind of the amateur circuit are about 30 or so minutes. You just need yourself a good 5-6 songs and you're good to go. So for us, maybe a little fewer than, 8, which some might feel like in a punk band, you might need 8 or 9 songs to fill out a 30-minute set. But we were a progressive rock band and some of our songs were 8 minutes long. So it wasn't too uncommon for us to not even play our full little EP just because our songs were long. But through the trial and error of starting this band, we had, played with, there was a group of us, me, probably, I guess, my best friend at the time, and a relative of mine. We'd kind of played around with some other friends of ours and just through trial and error and just goofing around through high school, we kind of found a lineup that seemed to stick. And that's kind of what we did. So, for about 1.5 years, 2 years during high school, we toured around with different things. But I'd say the last 6 months that we were in high school, at least that some of us were in high schools, because one of the guys in the band was a year younger. We really found the lineup that worked. We found the style we wanted to do. We had kind of the dynamic worked out, and these things just kind of happen on their own. So reality is, at the time, I wasn't an especially great singer. Not to say that I am now, but it became clear that I was better suited as a guitar player, and that's what I did. My good friend, while we both started playing guitar together at the same time, it was something that helped fuel our friendship. While he was a guitar player too, he tended to move into the bass role, and it just seemed to be a natural thing. He hadn't been playing as long, and for whatever reason, I tended to pick up on guitar a little quicker than he did. Not to say that he's a bad guitar player, but for, we're talking about people who've been playing for like 2 years, and I tended to be a little bit better on the guitar. That's fine. So he ended up playing bass. The relative of mine was already a very good drummer, so that worked out nicely. And then somebody I'd met along the way ended up being like another guitar player / singer. Well, the truth is, in some ways, this guy was a better guitar player than I was, at least in certain instances and genres. He was by far the best singer of the group. So here are the 4 of us go. We're making music. We're writing songs, and now we're playing gigs. So late the last year or so, year or two of high school, we're playing some gigs. Our friends are coming out to shows and that kind of stuff, and it's a fun time. It's nothing serious. Then it gets to a point where after playing it for about a year, we've all got a few months left of high school. We go out and we record an album, or an EP, I should say. And this was done because we had worked with another band that had a studio in their house out of California, and they had all moved to Texas for whatever reason. And next thing you know, one thing led to another. We started playing some shows with each other, just like you tend to do. You network, you find people you like, that are similar genres, and you tend to work with each other a lot and kind of, push and pull each other. So through them, we gave them some money. We recorded at their house. We had an EP going. So cool. We have a CD. We got a band. We have an image. We have a small group following. This is awesome, right? This is what we've been working for the better part of 2 years for, right? We've got a CD. It sounds decent. We have a pretty decent show set up. We all have gear, equipment. We sound decent live. But after about 2 years, things really got difficult. And this is the big thing I want to touch on is not talking so much about the work you put into getting it there. That's the fun part. The truth is, I think most people enjoy working with each other in the music creation process. It's very fun. Not to say there's not some trials and tribulations involved, but there's just something about bringing an idea to the table, working on it with a group of friends or other people, and making it come to life in full, starting from the beginning to end with a finished song. And it really is powerful, especially when you have other people working on it alongside you at the same time. It gives you something to look forward to every Sunday afternoon, when you go to get together for your band practice, which was our thing. We got together on Sundays, almost every week. Well, this is the reality. We graduated high school. We'd probably played 20, 30 shows together before that. Then we all graduated high school. Some of us went to one college, some went to another, some did some things. One of us was still in high school. But, it took our practices became fewer and fewer, but it wasn't as big of a deal because we had already rehearsed. We knew the material. So that's kind of the situation we were in. And that's around the time frame when things started to kind of started to fall apart. It was sort of the beginning of the end. And I don't think it was because we were in different places in our lives necessarily. It was more so because things change, right? And it wasn't so much the difference of where we were at, what college we went to, where we currently live. Because at one point, one of us moved somewhere, although still in driving distance. One moved another place. One had a car, one didn't. Things got complicated, but we still made them work because this is something we'd already put a lot of time and effort into, and we all were invested. So we were all invested. We had a CD. We had a following. We were starting to get some good press coverage through college radio stations. It's like, hey, this is kind of working out. We had a good sound. We had a good recording. I mean, all the hard work, so we thought, had been done. But that's just the beginning. That's just the tip of the iceberg. Because here's the reality. Our band dynamics were not fully understood. We didn't respect each other. We were immature. And like most musicians, we didn't have our egos in check. And things became, the trivial stuff became what was most important. We started talking about monopoly money when we started talking about doing our full-length CD, what percentage of album sales each of us gets, and it got ugly. And it just got to a point where it's like relationships got tested and very, very strained. And while we all still talk to each other, I mean, some of us a little bit more so than others, but it's not that we're not friendly or supportive of each other, but thought of getting back together with all these people in the same building and trying to do a band again, it's never going to happen. And I think when I'm done with this episode, you'll kind of see why. So one of the big things is when I talk about band dynamics is generally there tends to be kind of a leader of the band. And initially, when this band got together, there really wasn't like a leader of it. There tended to be three of us that were kind of the core of the band, and then we got a fourth person in as we were just kind of playing with other people for fun and writing music, kind of eclectically, and everybody would bring an idea to the table, and we didn't really have a very unified sound. But once we found this fourth member, and this person could sing very well, it's like everything just seemed to gel. We worked with each other well. It was fun. But just, through the effort of making an album come together and making a set and then playing shows, our roles kind of became established. And it ended up that I was sort of like the leader of the band, right? I was the one who wrote the songs, and it just seemed to work out pretty well because usually when I would come to rehearsal with a song idea, it was pretty much a finished concept as far as beginning to end, as far as the guitars go. Sometimes I have some ideas for drum, bass, vocals, but I was pretty good about at least leaving things open, even though I might have had some very strong opinions about things. But the way it worked out, I ended up being the person who was the songwriter / leader, so to speak, of the group. And this worked for a while, but the reality is, being a young teenager and then going into my early 20s, I hadn't really perfected my leadership. Not to say I have now, but there were some things I did that I think made things very difficult. And I think that had I been a better leader and had the other members of the band been a little bit more mature, things perhaps would have lasted a little bit longer. But at the end of the day, we went our own ways. But this is why. So initially, the lead singer was more so the leader of the group, and that kind of torch sort of was passed on. And what I come to find out, it was kind of begrudgingly, because as I started being as I became the songwriter, all the songs we were playing for our shows, I had written, all the songs that were on our album, I had written, and basically the direction of the band had been established by my songwriting. And while that's not necessarily a bad thing, the problem was it was a very progressive rock group, very much so in the direction of Tool, A Perfect Circle, and that kind of thing. Odd time signatures, key changes, very technical, I guess you could say. And the singer, while they had a great voice, really seemed to struggle with that genre. The other, of the four of us, the other three that were not the singer had all been in band and were classically trained, and this stuff was pretty easy to us. And it got to where it was kind of frustrating for the three of us to work with the singer because they struggled so badly with the time signatures, and it just got to the point where it became where they started checking out, and they would come to practice unrehearsed, and it became very clear that they were becoming less and less invested. The more technical our music got, the worse they performed at shows. And it got to where, like, you could tell the singer was very, very nervous being at shows because they were basically tanking and dive bombing, Granted, our album sounded okay, but that was after many, many tries and lots of editing. And I think one of the mistakes I made is trying to push this person into a role that he could not be in. I kept writing music that was more and more technical and made just really, in some ways, from his perspective, I was making his job very difficult. I was writing music that me and the other two members of the band felt and really appreciated, but the singer just wasn't on board with that direction, because the direction that we had taken over the years had progressively gotten more and more progressive, I guess you could say, more in the Tool direction, progressive metal. And that was really not their thing. So looking back on it, it's not so much that, the singer was wrong or that I was wrong. It's just three of the four of us were going in a direction that the other one wasn't. And the reality is, not to say that we should have not gone in the direction we did, but perhaps had, we had been older and more clear and had kind of come to the situation with an established sound, it would have been very obvious in the beginning that this was not going to be a good fit for him. And so, we struggled on for another year and a half, and it just got to where it became very strained. There was some pretty ugly words. There was a show where I remember there was a show where the singer ended up just coming in so poorly rehearsed that I had to be right next to him in his ear, kind of singing along with him as I'm playing guitar, which made my life very difficult. And it became very apparent to those in the audience that he didn't really know what was going on. And he was we were kind of having to drag him through the mud just to get him to show up. And it was just one of those things. You begin to realize this isn't going to work. So I still love the guy. I wish the best for him. But the truth is, the point in what I was just saying is the direction of the band went in a way that the singer could not follow. And that's the reality. If you're trying to do technical music, not everyone can do it. So one of the big takeaways from there is keep in mind that as the direction of a group changes musically and sonically, there's a good chance that your members might change and need to be changed, because the bottom line is, if your singer isn't feeling the music that they're singing, they don't need to be in the group, because it's just not going to work. Something else, though, perhaps if I was really interested in keeping this group together, perhaps I could have worked with this person more so on the genre and styles, and maybe made things less complicated so that they could play the music better. And that's something I kind of toyed around with. But the reality is, the singer was on drugs, and that was his lifestyle, which is something else that happens a lot in music. just drugs and rock and roll and everything that goes with it really tears away at bands. People aren't rational when they're on drugs. And this was one of those things that helped keep me away. For example, there was one show where the singer, we got there way early and there was other bands playing. It was in like this big warehouse for like Halloween. And it was pretty apparent that this was going to be a shitty gig because most of the people there were super messed up on one thing or the other. So, by the time, we got up on stage, a lot of people I'm not sure if they were still there or not, but there didn't seem to be as many people in the audience, and those who were there were really messed up. And this was at a point in time where acid was really hard to get a hold of. And I've never done any of this stuff. I'm not a druggie at all, never have been. But the singer managed to get himself a hold of some acid, took that, and by the time we got to play, he was on a completely different planet. In fact, it got so bad that at one point the singer was holding his microphone, stepped on the cable. The cable came out from the microphone. Somebody who was running sound came up there to reestablish it without the singer even realizing that nobody could hear what he was saying. And me and the bass player were up there just like, shoving the sound guy off, like, don't worry about it, let it go. Why? Because he was singing so terribly, it was actually better with him up there lip syncing. So, as this guy kind of came down from that high, and, was just another X against him. And, once he kind of realized how ridiculous he was embarrassed. Just another example of things that go wrong in bands. Drugs happen, embarrassing moments happen, and there's kind of no erasing those memories and moments. At least the few that you can remember, right? So just to kind of paint a portrait, so you got three guys who are going in a different direction than the singer is. Singer's got his own personal problems. So it gets to a point where we need to find another singer. I went back and tried to re-record some vocals, and it's just like the bottom line is either we have to find a very technical guitar player who's very suited to this genre, which are very few and far between. And if you were to hear that old style of music that we used to play, it's nothing like what I currently do, but it would be pretty obvious that the odds of finding somebody who could play those kind of guitar lines are very few and far between just because it's so different. So the reality was I could kind of pull off the vocals, but at the time I really wasn't a very strong singer. And it was, definitely I would have to be pushing it. And the style of music was difficult and it was not possible for me to sing and play for an entire set. A three-piece band doing progressive metal is pretty tough to do. So the journey goes on. We try to find singers. We audition, and we just could not find the right person. Our lives move in different directions. We practice less. Then, ironically, next thing you know, we get to the point where we're not really playing anymore. Some of us are very invested in college. The person in high school graduates, moves on. We hadn't played a show in over a year. Next thing you know, after about a year and a half of us not playing shows and not really talking too much to each other, the other three members of the band ended up joining with a couple other guys. And it wasn't something done on purpose. It was just something like, hey, the ex-lead singer, these other two guys were playing some stuff. It was a keyboard player and a rapper guy. And, they needed a drummer. So they talked to our old drummer. Next thing you know, they need a bass player. That's just how the network went. So here I was, the leader of a band that was on its way, up and doing some good things, basically on my own. And it's just kind of weird how that happens because at the time I was a little bit frustrated by the whole thing. But the reality is we couldn't find a singer who could fit the bill. We tried, a good 10 or so people at auditions, tried going from there, and just nothing fit the bill. We were all young, trying to do a style of music that very people in our age bracket would have the ability to do. And as it just so happens, when it came to singers, we just really could never find anyone. So, looking back, it really wasn't a personal thing, but, if you can't find the right person after a certain amount of time, people move on. And ironically, from that band, that was made up by my ex-lead singer, drummer, and bass player, two of them, split off from there, the bass player and drummer split off and joined a band that was put together by two members from the previous band that we had recorded with and done a lot of music, working with. They were the ones that we went to their house and recorded. So next thing you know, two of the members from a band that we used to play with, and two members from a band that I used to play with, are all in groups. And this is like 3 bands later, So it's just one of those things. Like, you begin to realize after time, people do band hop, and it's not because they're out there trying to. It's just sometimes the opportunity isn't there. Sometimes things don't work out, and you begin to realize how much being in a band is kind of like a job. And at different companies, all in the same industry, but there's just different opportunities out there, and people have to do what's best for them. Now, in all fairness, I don't blame the 2 guys from splitting off from the group that came after the one I was in. If you were to begin to realize some of the dynamics of those guys, just drugs and crazy behavior really got in the way of things. So just one of the many reasons why I'm a huge advocate of staying drug free, because, without getting into all the specifics of what I'd seen, experienced, and heard, they really, if I thought drugs took a toll on the group I was in, oh my goodness, were they really bad on the group that came after me. And then it comes to here these 2 guys are in another group, and once again you have the same situation where you've got 3 guys wanting to proceed, and the singer that was in the mixture of what I guess you could call the super group. You got 4 guys, but there it comes, you got to have a good singer, and the good singer and the guitar player are fighting with each other, and then poof, the singer quits, and shortly thereafter the band dissolves. So the point of all this is, it really is an exceptionally rare thing when you can get a group of people together and get them to stick it out for more than a couple years. It seems like the average life of a band, if that ever gets off the ground, is if you ever get a group of guys that are off and gals that are off, get them off the ground, get them to make a CD, get them to start playing, touring, whatever. It seems like you get about 1 album in, and then after that they're done. And the truth is, it is so hard to maintain those relationships and that balance and make it a worthwhile venture for everyone in the band. So that's something that somebody who is kind of like the band leader needs to understand. You have to make it to where it's worth the while for yourself and for those around you. And keep in mind that as much as you want something to work, if the right people aren't involved, it will not work. And if you can kind of see, 2 years into the future that this person, while they may be very talented, you may like them or whatever, but if you can realize that, hey, they're going to, let's say, graduate college, or their career goals are going to go in a direction where in a couple years we're like, they're not going to be around you in your area very often for more than a year or 2 from now, things aren't going to work. And so, not to say it's a waste of time, but if your goal is to be in a band that survives the test of time, there's a lot of things you got to think about. And so, to bring it back to off the tangent I just got on, the band that I was originally talking about, that I was in, I kind of explained some of the problems that we had, with the 3 of us finding a singer and what kind of caused that to dissolve. But something else I haven't really talked about is just the overall dynamics about the other members of that band and how it all seemed to work. So let's talk about the drummer for a minute. The drummer was a family member of some degree, and this person was by far the most musically talented out of all of us. As far as a player, this person is a professional, true and true, especially today. They are by far the most blessed, talented musician, one of the most that I've ever met and gotten to know personally. While I may be a decent guitar player, this person on their instrument is considerably better than I will ever be on mine. And I'm fine with that. I've come to terms with the reality that some people just have something others don't, and that's what makes things special. So, but as far as the band goes, here you've got a singer who has a very good voice, but very limited skill set. You've got a drummer who is exceptionally good and makes it a point without necessarily trying to show how good he is. It is a lot of complicated fills and tom work and all kinds of stuff. Like, making it to where it's very hard to not want to watch the drummer most of the way through. You've got a guitar player who's playing some very intricate, very interesting leads and guitar riffs. And then you've got a bass player who is I would say in some ways at the time was not quite as developed as the other three members of the band. Not to say that they're not very good now, but at the time, if you had to say who was the worst member of the band, it was probably this person, at least on their instrument. Nowadays, if I were to take these, those same four people and put them into a pile, I'm the worst musician of the four of us. So in case those of you who are, if you're one of those other three guys listening to this, hey, I'm the first one to tell you, y'all have all exceeded, anything I've ever done on my own merits. But at the time, here's a person feeling a little bit, like they're having to take a back seat and they're feeling a little bit intimidated because they're surrounded by guys who are in their mind better than he is. And here's the guy trying to kind of make trying to shine through all the other lights in the group. And it got to where there was some issues where he felt that he wasn't appreciated. You could tell he was kind of intimidated at times, being at a show and, he's not really standing out like he would like to. And it got to where there was musical direction issues where he would want to throw in some random bass riff to make, and the whole reason was not because it was better for the music, but he wanted to look good on stage and he didn't want to look like a guy who's just some crappy bass player who, now nowadays, if we're, when I play with him, it's, we laugh about this kind of stuff because he realizes that, understanding your role within the song is more important than trying to stand out, because if you sound good within your role as a instrumentalist within the song, you look good within the band. So, the taller those around you stand, the taller you stand. And so if that means you have to play back a little bit, or you have to back off, you look better when you do that. So, but that's just, us going, 10, 12 years later, after the fact, we realize this now. But at the time when you're in your young 20s and full of testosterone, you don't realize this. But the truth of the matter was, you have a bass player who feels like they're not appreciated and that their ideas aren't very welcomed. And this is the primary person who was booking the shows. So this person, you could say, as far as the band members' value, in our eyes, he was the one booking shows for us. And he's frustrated because we're not booking shows. He's the one always having to book shows. And I'm frustrated because nobody seems to know their material as well. And I have to come up with all the stuff and try to get everybody to come to practice and pick them up and make arrangements. And then you have a singer that's frustrated because we're going in a direction that he doesn't like. He doesn't, and the truth is he really can't perform. And then you have a drummer who likes what he's doing, but he has his own issues with, sure, it'd be nice if we could all get along, or if we were all better on his instruments. And wouldn't it be nice if he could play with people who were as good as he was? And I think in time he came to realize that nobody, for the most part, is as good at their instruments as he is as his. If he wants to get mad, he needs to be mad at the higher power, God, or whoever that may be, for giving him the talent to do what he does. But just to give you an example, this guy can keep a beat that makes sense using 4 different time signatures on each of his appendages. That I guess, and I'm sure if with the, I'll just stop there and I'll leave this potential 5th appendage out of this. But I'm sure if he wanted to, he could add a 5th appendage to this mix and still make it work. But the guy can play 4 different time signatures with each hand and foot and make it come together. It's just absolutely, will blow your mind. Like, who can do that? So clearly he was by far the best musician of us. I was by far the best songwriter of us. And then we had somebody who was, a very, very good singer. And then you had a bass player who was very, very, who was the most, I would say the most ambitious of us. just to put it to this bass player now does very well for himself and doing one-man bands, has random cover groups, original material he does, and basically funds his life through his own efforts. He's not just a hired gun making, $100-$200 a gig, at somebody else's disposure. Hey, he writes his own schedule, so to speak. So it's just funny looking back at it. Had perhaps we had been a little bit more mature, had I been a better leader, and had everybody just had some more experience under their belt, and if hindsight could have been 20/20, and we could have learned what we did 10 years down the road and known it then, we actually might have had the ability to do very, very well. But there would have had to been compromises that needed to be made. And so not to say that it would have ever worked, because there were some other issues outside of just direction and other things. Like I mentioned, drugs, just location, and just the time getting together and making all that stuff work. But as I mentioned, the drummer was by far the best musician. The bass player was probably the most ambitious and was the one booking the shows. I was the band leader and trying to keep the dynamics and everybody happy and trying to book practices and write songs and get everything together and working with people individually. And then we had a singer who was just struggling in his own world and just not able to roll with the changes that the band was going through. And, perhaps had things been different, perhaps if I had started making up music that wasn't quite so complicated, he would have been fine, So perhaps if me being the band leader, I think there are some things I could have done that could have at least prolonged our existence. Not to say that it would necessarily kept us together for the next 10 years, but just a few things I think I could have done to, as a leader, to make things work better are as follows. For one, there is no point in trying to get people to play a game that they are unable to play. So I think hindsight being 20/20, if my goal was to keep the band together and not so much about the music I was writing or getting lost in the technicality of things, I could have made music that was not in like 5/4 time signatures or 7/8. Make more traditional time signatures so that the singer could follow along. And basically, it's not just because I've made it complicated. The truth is, I didn't give the singer a whole lot of room for vocals. So perhaps if I'd made songs that were that left more room for a vocalist to contribute, he wouldn't have been frustrated and we wouldn't have had those issues. Perhaps if I would have done more and opened up, taken more of the bass player's suggestions and just let him do his thing and not worry about it, about, him trying to do his little showboat bass things. If that made him happy, that's fine. If he wants to stand out, that's fine. And I think if we would have given him the opportunity to, let him give him some moments to really shine, he wouldn't have felt like he was being overshadowed. These are small things that I could have done without making it obvious, and that person would have been happier. As far as the drummer goes, there are some things I cannot possibly do, and I can't make myself or other people get better to his level. But I definitely know that there is a lot of creative vision that this person has and still has to this day that got squashed because this is my song. I wrote it. This is how it goes. Let's just move on, And I think we worried too much about the minutia and didn't focus on the big picture. And because this person was a little younger than us, we probably didn't give them the respect that they felt they needed as an individual. And so all of these things kind of came together in a big melting point. Add drugs to the situation, add girlfriends to the situation, some who have gone, some who have stayed around, some we have married, some we have not. And just the difference of space, and then finally the element of time. At some point we just stopped talking, we stopped working together, and we all went our separate ways, and that was that. And it gets to a point where we all just stop caring. And when enough people stop caring, it's over. And it got to the point where I didn't care anymore. And I realized I can't expect other people to care more about music that I'm writing than they do. And it got to the point where for us to really progress, we were going to have to find a new singer, record a whole new album, and do all that work that we've been doing for the past two or 3 years and to restart that. And it was so daunting. And there were so many mixed emotions that it's like, you know what? Let's just leave it be. Let's stop here. So hopefully that wasn't too crazy and hard to keep up with, but I just wanted to share some kind of insight from somebody who has been in a semi-successful band, even though it was at a younger age. And if I were to start things over again, heaven forbid, I think I would have been a lot more successful, as I've learned quite a bit about leadership as I've aged. What I currently do in my professional life is I lead teams of people, and it's amazing how much your personal life and professional life interact with each other. And had I been the leader I am today back then, I think things would have been very, very different. Not to say I blame myself for why the band broke up. Who cares? It's not like we were getting rich off the thing anyways. It's this is what worked out best for everyone, and it's nothing personal. I have no regrets. My life took a different direction just like everyone else's did, and that's okay. But that's the reality is people's lives change, the direction they need to take with them change, and so it becomes very hard for people to be in a full-time band and have full-time responsibilities outside of it. So it's just one of those things we have to take into consideration when we are forming a band, is understanding the dynamics of the people we work with and what we have to do to make it work. And if what we have to do to make it work isn't worth it to each of us, then it will not work. So that's kind of the $1 million question, is what is it worth for us to all be invested in a group, right? And how do we manage those never-ending band dynamics? All right, guys, thanks for tuning in, and I'll talk to y'all next time. Ciao.